So, or because I was just thinking of just doing a little snippet that might come in the middle of it somewhere.
Oh yeah, that's mine. I like this line.
I'll start with
I particularly like this book, Many Voices, because it's really a history of the testimonies from all sides of the story of Indigenous children being taken from their families. And more particularly what I like is the quote on the back, and this is something to keep in mind when you're doing your history. I didn't think my little story would be so big.
So what we have is just a scout through my own library of a huge variety of ways in which people tell their stories. They could be formal oral histories like the Many Voices. They can be combinations of that. Here's a lovely one, Beyond Chinatown, about Chinese Australians in the Northern Territory in Darwin. And as the author says, the editor, she uses official documents, but its major storytellers are the Chinese Australians themselves, who through oral history, family stories, photographs and their own accounts place themselves in the mainstream of Australian history. And so that's the way we can do this. You can have something very formal, like a federal cabinet minister's diary. You might have something very poignant and very poor, the incredibly hard life of this swagman who kept a record, twopence an hour. It's at 1 cent an hour he was paid for about a 16-hour working day. Really hard labour in the 19th century, in his own words. Aboriginal testimonies, collected by Aboriginal or written by Aboriginal people themselves. So it's not as objects, they are their own subjects of their own stories and their own experiences. Migration stories, again told by those who did migrate to Australia or about their families. 300 Australians interviewed right across the country as a massive project of recording the entire lives and experiences, childhood, sexuality, disasters, illness, the whole range of experiences of those 300 Australians across the country. And then this, I think, is a very apposite book for the time. Oral Histories, Voices of Freedom in the United States, and Oral History of the Civil Rights Movement from the 1950s to the 1980s. And to talk about the range, it's not just Australian. Here are the stories of people who live in the world's so-called largest slum, Dharavi, near Mumbai. So Sandra, what are some of the questions that have cropped up or some of the common elements to the series that strike you?
Some of the common elements would be to keep it simple. Set yourself a small plan and a goal, and don't do anything too big.
For example, you might just have a book, for example, or even a photo book.
And I have one here where it's My Home in Onkaparinga, and it's a beautiful little book, and it's a collection of stories about all of these people, and they range in age from 12 to 93.
Yes.
And it's just wonderful. And another thing I think that people have spoken about is technology, and maybe that it's too high tech.
Abby Thomas, you have some tips for us if you want to record an interview using your phone.
That's right. Phones are amazing. You can do so much with them, and you can make great videos with them. And just a couple of things to remember which can improve the quality of your video no end. First thing is to make sure that your lenses are cleaned. Now, phones have a lens there and another one there on that side. And if you just get a little bit of cloth and just clean both of those really well, then you won't have any smears on your lens. The second thing is always to make sure that you film people with your phone on this horizontal plane, not on the vertical plane, so that when people watch that video, it will fill the entire screen in horizontal. Otherwise, you'll just have a little sort of letterbox slot there.
Yeah.
The third thing is to make sure that you're the right sort of distance from the camera. This is to do with sound. So my voice is not very loud, and so Sue is actually filming me quite close up. She's about 45, 50 centimetres away from me. If she had an external microphone on her phone, she could probably go further back, but without an external microphone plugged into your phone, it's a good idea to kind of stay within a metre of your subject. The fourth thing is use a tripod if you can. Tripods are pretty cheap. You can buy them in most tech stores and they will stabilise your phone and keep it nice and still. You probably won't be able to attach your phone directly to the tripod, but there's a little adapter that you can buy for about $10-15 from places like JB Hi-Fi, and it's a little spring-loaded system that you can just slide your phone into and it will attach that to the tripod. So that's a great way to and then you're kind of free to actually go and talk to the talent and get yourself organised. The final tip is to put your phone on airplane mode before you start filming so that you don't get interrupted by any phone calls or text messages.
There's been a lot of oral history recordings that have been interrupted by their mobile phones.
I know, phones do so many different things. There's always some sort of interruption going on. So good luck with your filming and I hope you make some great videos.
Thank you.
And in fact, you can still use a pen and paper. It doesn't have to be any great shakes. And last weekend, a 90-year-old lady decided that she was asked would she write down some information about her parents. And she chose to write a 3-page piece in pen and paper. And it was as simple as that. But for those of you who are a little bit more tech savvy, the Oral History Handbook is also a really good tool to have by your side and to assist you in sorting out how to do an oral history. And keep in mind that if you do it, the State Library might actually be interested in keeping it as a record.
When we talk about if you want to write about your community, we're not just talking about a neighbourhood necessarily, are we?
No, sometimes you're talking about a story in the community of migration. And a really interesting book is The Greek Women in South Australian Society, and it ranges from 1923 to 1993. And this was actually Georgia Senefo, and she wrote this following her migration to South Australia. And it includes stories of other women like her within the community. And together they tell a story.
The other question, one of the many questions we had was in fact also, if you tell a story and you post it to social media, who owns the story?
That's quite interesting, and you need to check that out if you feel that it's very personal and that it belongs to you, because a lot of the platforms have terms and conditions whereby, say Instagram, if you do post photographs to Instagram, they then become their property.
But you keep the ownership.
But you keep the ownership.
That's right. But they can use as they see fit.
Exactly,
Yes.
they can use it as well. And the same with Facebook. So if you want to be private about it, then they're probably not the platforms for you. But there are other platforms that you could use.
Hi, my name's Greg Mackey. I'm the Chief Executive of the History Trust of South Australia.
Hi, my name's Christy Kokiki. I'm the Director of Public Engagement here at the History Trust of South Australia.
Great, thank you. The History Trust does actually collect social history from individuals, doesn't it?
Yes, our legislated remit is to collect material culture of and from South Australia that tells the story of the people who've come here, the people who were born here, and the people who predated European settlement in this country.
Yes, thank you. So the sorts of things you might have, for example, might be from a family who migrated here and have stories attached. You use the P word for this.
Provenance. One of the criteria for acquisition to the State History Collection is that we aim to know the provenance of the object and therefore its place and how it connects with South Australia's history. doesn't only mean the big things, the big grand things. It can be the little things. It can be that which was in the suitcase of a migrant that came to this place. It can be a major object of furniture or any related ephemera that helps to tell that person or that family or that place story.
Yes, thank you. And you now also, and I know because you've got it up on your screen, have a very specific project relating to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, so we have a contemporary collecting project. We consider that's a really important part of our remit here at the History Trust of South Australia. We acknowledge we're living through a very historic period right now, and it's really important that we capture that South Australian experience of the pandemic. So what we're asking people to do through this portal is to submit their stories, their experiences of the pandemic, and images of objects or images that might give help illustrate that experience that they've had.
And you've had some questions about this.
We have. So in talking to the community about collecting for COVID-19 and collecting that South Australian story, people have been quite surprised. They expect us as a museums organisation to collect big significant objects that's significant to state stories, and what we've been trying to the conversations we're having are that it's those personal stories and those individual items that we're really interested in, because it resonates with people. If we put these objects in a museum in 50 years' time, it's those personal stories and experiences that will really speak to people. So that's what we're interested in collecting.
So Susan, I have just finished editing the final movie.
Fantastic.
What are you doing?
I am busily posting Instagram photos still on the hashtag MSZF Make History at Home. And because this is session 5, I've been putting up things which actually link people to other sources.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. So museums, archives, local history collections, examples of interesting ways you can use your personal or family history. There's a big tree that a family lived in, a German family in the 19th century in South Australia, an Aboriginal people's exhibition using wonderful things like surfboards and ball gowns that you didn't necessarily. Wow. And advising people to use their library. And this is one of my favourite photos. I will show this. Yes. This was during a Festival of Arts a couple of years ago. This is our state library, looking rather unusually well lit. So now, today, we have finished. And we particularly want to thank Sandra, Kearney, and I'm Susan Marsden, and our Marsden Szwarcbord Foundation for supporting this.
Yeah,
but also
great.
All the people who've made contributions, which has been quite a vast crowd.
Yes, quite a large community.
Quite a large community, yes, of historians and local people here, friends and family, and people, of course, who are watching what we've talked about. So thank you. And although this is the final session for the YouTube, we very much would welcome you posting your stories and your explorations in your own history.
On Instagram and on Facebook. And please drop us a line and we'll take it from there.
And if you want to actually get hold of more detailed notes from these sessions, drop us a line for that too. Thank you.
Thank you.